During the course of our lives, we see many things that amaze us and fill us with wonder, and we often refer to these things as being miraculous, but none of them are necessarily miracles. A miracle is an extraordinary event that is the product of a God that is purposeful, benevolent, and intending to communicate. This doesn't mean that God is only occasionally present and that every once in a while he chooses to interrupt or intervene. The God of the Bible is in control of all things, and his normal and sustaining work creates regularity. A miracle is when God works in a way that is other than his normal and regular action. And he does this to instill awe at his nature and to achieve the good end he desires. God has created and sustains the universe in patterns that we describe as natural laws, such as the law of gravity. A miracle is often mischaracterized as a suspension or a violation of these laws. However, miracles may be more accurately described as revealing an element that does not normally present itself in how the world works, and is therefore not accounted for by the natural laws. To illustrate this idea, picture a vase falling off a table. The law of gravity says the vase will continue falling until it hits the floor. The fall of the vase is a naturally occurring event and is predictable as long as no other factors are present or at work. But if you're standing next to the table and catch the vase, has the law of gravity been violated? Of course not. The law of gravity does not and cannot account for the behavior of a freely acting agent who chooses to interrupt the fall of the vase. Whether or not you choose to catch the vase, the law of gravity is still in force. If God exists, then he is always in the room, always in control of the vase, and as a free agent has the ability to act extraordinarily at any time. The methods used by scientists in their work are based on the principles of uniformity and regularity. Some people think if miracles occurred, it would upset the natural order and thus render the scientific method useless. But there are almost always unknown factors and agents at work in the physical world, and many events cannot be predicted regardless of scientific knowledge. For example, for all of our knowledge of civil and mechanical engineering and psychology, we still cannot predict car crashes. But that doesn't make us skeptical of the ability to have scientific knowledge. Miracles are vehicles God uses to communicate purposefully and specifically. They're events that betray an intelligent action. The normalcy and regularity of the universe equip us to recognize such extraordinary events. When a claim of a miraculous event is made, it's a claim of intelligent action by a powerful, transcendent being in an extraordinary way. Miracles need to be investigated as non-uniform, irregular, purposeful events. And as such, natural science has no place at the table other than establishing what is normal and regular. Science is not the sole method of explanation for this world, nor does it trump or carry more weight than other ways of knowing. Other methods of explanation, such as philosophy, are not subject to natural science. Both science and philosophy exercise authority for offering explanations, but not in the same arenas. Explanatory disciplines conflict when one is used to try to explain what is outside its sphere and belongs to another. Thus, natural science does not show that miracles cannot happen. It does, however, help to equip us to recognize miracles if they were to occur. It's probably safe to say that the majority of people we know don't claim to have witnessed a miracle. Skeptics of God's existence have often seized on this as evidence against miracles. But just because something happens rarely, or even only once in the course of history, does not mean that there is no good reason to believe it occurred. To demonstrate this, picture Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. We know with great certainty that plays were performed there regularly from 1863 to 1865. But we also know with great certainty that on April 14, 1865, Abraham Lincoln was shot while watching a play in Ford's Theater. Just because Abraham Lincoln was assassinated only once does not make it historically suspect. And just because his assassination was improbable does not mean that there is a lack of evidence regarding the facts. The frequency of an event and the evidence for the occurrence of a one-time event are two entirely different matters. Consider another example. The odds of winning the grand prize in the Powerball lottery are over 120 million to 1. Using the skeptic's reasoning, there's no good reason to believe that anyone has ever won the lottery. But a number of people actually have won the Powerball grand prize despite the odds. The rarity of the feat says nothing about the ability to know it occurred. The same could be said for miracles. In fact, it's the frequency of miracles that give them their force. After all, the parting of the Red Sea wouldn't be news if it happened fairly often. If miracles are extraordinary, intentional occurrences performed by God, what is their purpose? There are many miracles in the New Testament that give us that answer. For example, in John 11:38-44, we read of the raising of Lazarus. Jesus indicates the purpose for raising Lazarus was to display God's glory. He also says the purpose of the miracle is to authenticate his ministry as being from God. The character of the miracle itself is good. Lazarus is raised from the dead and returned to the family that mourns him. This miracle is representative of miracles in the New Testament and shows they have a threefold purpose: to give God credit for being the source of the miracle, to authenticate the claims of the miracle worker, and the benevolent character of the miracle itself. If the New Testament is truly the continued and final revelation of the God described in the Old Testament, then we should see the same pattern regarding miracles in the Hebrew Scriptures. The parting of the Red Sea in Exodus 14:13-18 indeed shows the same pattern. The power of the miracle is attributed to God. We see Moses obeying God's directions to accomplish the work. The purpose of the miracle is to demonstrate God's sovereignty and provision to the people of Israel as well as to their enemies. The character of the miracle is ultimately good because it frees an entire nation of people from bondage and slavery. As in the New Testament, the Old Testament's miracles consistently attribute their source to God, are purposeful, and benevolent in character. This becomes an extremely important point because the existence of miracles and their accurate documentation in the Bible help to authenticate the Bible as an authoritative book containing the Word of God.